Alright, so in this video, we are going to discuss carbureted bikes versus fuel injection. Let's check it out. What's going on, YouTube? FX Sales Brooklyn is back in the building. And we are coming at you live from a very cold morning here in Brooklyn, New York. Of course, the Bushwick bike is out here in Bushwick, Brooklyn. Ah, yeah. Let us rip. Let us rip. Beautiful, man. Absolutely beautiful. And one thing to know about a carbureted bike is you have to turn the fuel on. One of the little switches you gotta deal with. Yes, you gotta turn the fuel on. But yeah, it's a really good topic. I had one subscriber write in on a couple different videos asking my opinion about that particular topic. And at this point, I've run multiple carbureted bikes and multiple fuel-injected bikes at this point. So I think I could give you a pretty good idea of what the benefits could be to each. Each one definitely has its benefits, and I think at the end of the day, it kind of comes down to your riding style and your riding preference, right? But I've said this before in a previous video, and in terms of if I had a choice between the two, what I'm always going to choose is I'm always going to choose my carbureted bikes 100%. Again, I will always choose my carbureted bikes over my fuel injected bikes. So you say, BK Low, why do you say that? Why do you not adhere to modern technology? Let's just take a second and let's just listen to this thing. Now let's get some revs in. A fuel-injected bike is not going to sound like that. So first off, there is a major difference in sound. To me, carbureted bikes just sound way more raw, way more, let's say, Harley-Davidson, the way when I grew up, I thought Harley-Davidson should sound. So there's definitely a major difference in the sound, right? But of course, sound is just sound, you know. We talk about on this channel everything being performance-oriented, performance-built, performance first and foremost. So there is a major difference in the performance of the bike when you are running a carbureted bike. It's like night and day for me. If you're a new rider, you probably will not notice it as much, but as an experienced rider, someone who's got a good amount of years, a good amount of miles on their bike, you're gonna notice it pretty quickly. There's a major difference in just how the bike will perform. To me, again, and I'm sure some people will argue with me about this, but I kind of noticed that my carbureted bikes are just a little bit more snappy when you twist the throttle, a little bit more crisper when you twist the throttle, and are just more like ready to kind of go like a bat out of hell. Where I feel like sometimes a fuel-injected bike just does not have the same snappiness with the throttle response, does not have the same crispness, obviously does not have the same sound, right? And my point of reference to this, and this is kind of my argument for why a FXDX is one of the best when it comes to dynos, is that if you look at all the stunt riders, say like East Coastin', Unknown, people who are serious about pushing these bikes to their limits performance-wise, which to me is either doing really long miles or is just straight stunting, you know, going 12 o'clock, doing the burnouts. Obviously, I'm not a stunter. I stay in my lane when it comes to that. But when you see all these guys out there stunting all these dynos, it's usually a 2000 to 2002 dyna. And it's more often than not, even the bagger guys that I see doing this, it's almost always a carbureted bike. And again, I'm not a stunter, so I could only hypothesize here. But I feel like, you know, if we were to write into a stunter, I do know a couple. I'm actually going to go see one today. It's my friend Shreds out in Long Island. I could ask him about it. But I think as a stunter, you know, as I'm talking about, you want that immediate throttle response. You want that crispness, you know, because you're about to be throwing the bike 12 o'clock. It would make sense that you would want a carbureted bike. my friend, is what a Carbureted DX can do. And there's my beautiful city. We love you, New York, as always. But yeah, like I said, I think the guys who are pushing these bikes to their absolute limits, you know, if that's your standard for what the optimal performance is, then that to me kind of makes sense. You know, most of those guys are not running fuel injected bikes. Don't get me wrong here, there's plenty of really good stunters out there that are doing it with fuel injected bikes, right? I'm just saying, what I notice is the ones who I see out there the most, like the really popular ones, like the East Coast and crew, etc., all those guys are doing it on carbureted bikes, and I think that has to do with the performance. Now, you don't have to be a rider that is stunting a Harley Davidson to have a preference for a carbureted bike. You could have a similar riding style to me and a lot of my friends where we just like to ride fast, you know? And especially in the climate of Brooklyn, New York City, you need a bike that can perform. You need a bike that can run fast when you need it to. And part of that is I want my bike to have the optimal response time, and for me, what's gonna feel like the fastest. And to me, I don't know, I just feel like I can always run my carbureted bikes in a faster way than I could run my fuel injected bikes. But at the end of the day, there's like a lot of hand waviness that goes along with that. But yeah, you all know I run my bikes hard, you know? And in terms of city riding, it's a lot of stop and go. So when I come out of a stop, I want to be able to come out of a stop with the, you know, for me, what feels like the most amount of power with no lag. And to me, that feels like a carbureted bike. But look, at the end of the day, it is just coming down to personal preference for sure. So, you know, obviously, my quote-unquote main bike at this point is a fuel-injected bike. That's my Lowrider S. And that bike does just fine in terms of power. You know, I love that bike. It's not carbureted. So a lot of this, you know, it kind of just comes down to personal preference. And I think if you're somebody that's asking about it, your best bet is to ride a carbureted bike, ride a fuel-injected bike, and see if you can pick up on some of the things that I mentioned. Because let's just say, you know, carbureted bikes do, it's not without its drawbacks. There's definitely some drawbacks to running a carbureted bike. You know, you're gonna potentially have a harder time getting that bike started in cold weather riding like I'm doing right now. We're talking a 30-degree day. But personally, I don't know if it's just my bikes. Like, people say this all the time about carbureted bikes. I never have any issues running my carbureted bikes in the cold, ever. So, I don't know, maybe I'm just lucky, but I don't ever seem to really have that issue. And I mean, another benefit is, I would argue that if something goes wrong with a carburetor, it's probably going to be a lot cheaper to get fixed than if something goes wrong with, say, fuel injected. I know from mechanics that I've talked to that they've told me that, yeah, it's like night and day in terms of repair. So with a carburetor, if you're really putting in heavy miles, you plan on breaking stuff, you know, it's probably going to be a cheaper and easier fix than if you have to fix something wrong with fuel injection. But as always, you know, definitely want to put this out there to you all, especially any of you that have run both carbureted and fuel injected, or are currently like me, where you have multiple bikes, some carbureted, some fuel injected. You know, what do you all think in the comment section? Is one really even better than the other, or is FXCLS Brooklyn just straight tripping here? But again, having a lot of miles on both a carbureted and a fuel-injected bike, if I ever had to choose between the two, just straight performance and sound-wise, I'm always going to go with the carbureted bike, 100%. And especially, even to take it one step further, if you are going to go with a carbureted bike, I really love the McCuney carbs. That's what I run on both my bikes. That's coming from, of course, the guidance of Peter Guns himself. And if you run the McCuneys, you could dial them in on the spot. So say I want my bike to idle at a higher RPM, I can make that happen with a couple twists, you know, easily. Whereas if I'm running a fuel-injected bike, I don't have that level of control whenever I want to. So yeah, man, fuel-injected versus carbureted. FXCLS Brooklyn is going with carbureted. I hope this helps, especially the couple subscribers that wrote in about this idea. As always, stay safe, stay low, ride carbureted bikes from the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s, ride modern fuel-injected bikes. Just whatever you do, make sure that you do ride. Stay safe, stay low, outride your demons. Shout out to the Stay Low crew, my Patreon support. Thanks for the support, y'all. And on that, FXCLS Brooklyn is out.